Fantastic. Hey, thank you so much, Ty Murphy, and for the Family Office Magazine conference team. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with you for the audience, and along with my three luminary panelists, my good old friend Vish Mishra from Silicon Valley, a tech legend, investor. And I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves briefly, and we'll enter into the conversation after a bit of a preamble for myself. And for my former pen pal, now my real in-person friend, Wendy Kraft, who runs Amogo's single family office, Ken Swick's family office, as well as for my new friend, Scott Peppett, who runs a single family office for the billionaire Sam Zell, who's a pretty renowned person. I think I'm especially excited about the topic today because something that really hits me near to my heart. It's part of what I've been doing for the past 14 years in the last 37 years in industry, grooming the next generation. And as we all know, around 60, 65, $70 trillion of wealth are going to get transferred in the next 2 to 3 decades. That's not a piggy bank amount. That's a pretty sizable amount. But in my having mentored one-on-one so many high achievers, teenagers, millennials, even Gen X CEOs, I've seen patterns that work, patterns that don't work. And honestly speaking, a lot of the young millennials and Gen Zs, they are not ready to receive the wealth. And I do know that, the ultra high net worth families, right, the ones with single family offices, they probably won't tell you so much about what they're really feeling and thinking. It's a very secretive and kind of private situation. I empathize that. But what I've seen is that the patriarchs and matriarchs would love to not only achieve the next level tangible outcomes, including succession planning, execution, wealth transfer, and kids get into great schools, having a great career outside or in a family business, but they really want peace of mind. A lot of them really want to have even better relationships with the kids and with the next gen at work, right? In your family office or at the family business or in a company. Isn't that true? That's what we all want, right? I'm a patriarch myself. And I'm so excited to have this illustrious panel today to really give their insight. And I'm going to ask them a few questions here. And, I've been doing this for a long, long time. And I think grooming the next generation, I'm very, very blessed to be known as the chief mentor of next gen leaders in family office circles and in some ultra network CEO circles and magazines. And it just gives me a kick to be able to talk about the art of mentoring the next gen and succession planning, more on a soft side, mindsets, soft skills, direction, strategies, execution, outside of the usual wealth preservation, wealth accumulation, additional growth enhancement via investing in all sorts of ways, right? Equities, private equity, public and real estate and hard assets and, kind of crypto, etc. We're here to talk really behind what I call the firewall of one's mind and soul, maybe a bit beyond your physiology, a bit of beyond your nervous system as well. Now, let's get into our conversation. First of all, I would like to see, ladies first, of course, right? Wendy, if you don't mind, same and then Scott and then Vish in that order. I put Wendy right next to me. I got 2 girls at home. I got a 2 Gen Z. I got a 24-year-old daughter. She works at Google. I got a 21-year-old daughter. She's going to graduate from Wharton this year. I'm surrounded by women all the time. So I'm very, used to being coached, right? Reverse mentored by my own next gens. So Wendy, why don't we start with you? Give a 30-second, 40-second of who you are.
Sure. Wendy Kraft. I run the single family office of Kent Swig in New York City. I've been in the family office space for over 20 years and have run the gamut, running a family office from mentoring next gen, succession planning, legacy planning, governance, and on down the road.
Fantastic. Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Peppett. Likewise, I've been in this space for a long time. I run a single family office and private trust company in Chicago, the High Trust Company. And prior to this was mostly working as an advisor with a lot of different families. Prior to that was a law professor for about 20 years, where I had both a dispute resolution background, but also was teaching about single family offices and kind of the family enterprise, family business world. So a bunch of different cross-cutting backgrounds, but my current role, I'm in a single family office here.
Wonderful. Vish?
Well, I'm a husband, a father, and a grandfather, and I just, just love the family and love a circle of friends. Professionally, I'm a, engineer by training. Run, part of a venture capital firm, $700 million under management. We have had like more than 100 investments, so 25 some plus exited either with M&A or IPOs. A couple of very prominent companies in the portfolio have been PayPal. Everybody knows about PayPal, and we just recently exited a company in India called BillDesk. It's an Indian financial, kind of services company. $4.7 billion exit. I also part of an association called TIE, where we basically bring highly successful people and teach them to be even more successful and give back to the community via entrepreneurship. So, and we believe that entrepreneurship is a noble profession. Wealth creation is a wonderful thing to have, because that's how you build community. That's how you build societies. So I'm just very, very proud of my work. So thank you very much.
Right. Just to add to that, I've known Vish and I have known each other for over 20 years, and TIE is the world's largest technology entrepreneurship association in the world with dozens of chapters, right? So the charter members, a lot of angels, a lot of successful CEOs, billionaires, and people like that. So, and Vish is being very humble right now. So let's move on to it. First question, right? It's always good to, leadership includes some little bit of vulnerability, a bit of kind of what have we learned, right? And struggles out there. What struggles have you seen in families out there, between the leading gen and the next gen? What are the common struggles that you see? Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, and all the way to the boomers that are typically leading gens. Of course, some leading gens include Gen X as well. Why don't we start with us, you, Scott?
I think the stereotypical struggle that people expect is a struggle over power and control, right? So people expect that the older generation doesn't want to give up control, and that the younger generation is trying to take control maybe too early or too aggressively or too something for the older generation to handle. That's not my experience. It does happen. I've worked with families where that's been going on for sure, but I actually see a different struggle most commonly, which is the more senior generation has a hard time communicating and sharing information about whatever it is, the family enterprise, family business, family office, family wealth, whatever the context is, because the senior generation is so embedded in that context, and they've been in it for so long, and they know so much about it. It's almost like they have this wet skin on that they don't even remember they have on, right? They know so much tactile information about how their system works and how to make judgment calls and the relationships that they have in the world that matter to the family. And so transferring any of that and really exposing a younger generation to all of that very close-in information is really tough. And the flip side of that is I know senior generation members who say, I don't get why the younger generation isn't more engaged. I don't get why they don't care more. I don't get why they don't ask me more questions about all this. And again, it's in a lot of cases, it's because the younger generation can see that this generation is somehow magically pulling off all the stuff that they're doing, but can't really decode it, right? They don't really, it's just somehow, grandpa or somehow dad or mom keeps pulling the rabbit out of the hat, but
Right.
They don't really understand how, and that's a real problem. So that's what I would say is that basic communication of how the sausage gets made is really difficult.
I see it quite a bit, especially with the younger new generation, the next gen. It's really, It's also part of the equation of wisdom as well.
Yeah.
Because they're not there yet in terms of experience and all that. Wendy, what do you see in a Swig family or beyond?
It's a little more complicated, so don't get mad at me, Jason.
Sure, absolutely.
So in our family,
Yeah.
Our fourth gens are the heirs of two iconic family offices. So their situation was very different than you would normally see. It's not, they're waiting for their turn. They're in their late 20s, but because they come from two very large families, they came into their own with separate wealth that wasn't dependent upon permission of the generation above them. So that's been really unique. They are a pleasure. In fact, I was sitting with one of the fourth gens down in the city last week, and I've known him since he was 8. And he has his own businesses, and he's just so amazing. And it's not my child, but in a way it feels like my child.
Yeah.
I'm very proud. I will say in our family, we had a very tough transition from the second to the third generation. Third generation is now in control. And also not typical, they decided they did not want that for the fourth generation. So they redid all the governance and everything else and have now put into place structures so that the fourth gen could shadow the investment committee, the family council, as young as 16, and then join it at an appropriate age. So they really did a lot of work that we would normally see on the third gen, on the second to third gen transition instead of the third to fourth. So they've recognized that they need to pull them in at a younger age, that they need to sit and figure out, show them what's going on. Why are we doing this? What does this accomplish? And how do we all work together as our family tree broadens? So it's, in ours is per capita, not per stirpe. So it's really very exciting.
Okay, great. We're going to cover more with additional as part of the conversation. With Vish, you've been mentoring your own family, and you have a lot of kids, right? We joke around kids and grandkids because they're entrepreneurs and kind of like kids as well. I mean, some of them are billionaires, right? They could be our kids because they may be bigger than us. Even though I look, with Asian American blood, I could be 1,000 years old. You guys don't know that. It's a bad joke to me. But Vish, what's your perspective in terms of struggles have you seen?
So, well, I have a philosophical view of this whole thing. As I mean, I'm a student of history, and historically, every generation, 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 300 years ago, they all think that the next generation is doomed. Next generation, they don't know. So this is so common, and I tell people, just please relax. If that was the case, imagine where the world would have been, because we all have read history, right? But the world has gotten better. Things have gotten better. There's more wealth, there's more education, there's more whatever you have. So I think especially the elderly people, they kind of, I think, Scott, you kind of put it, because they have this little struggle. Oh gosh, look at what's happening to the younger generation. They don't pay, we struggle. When I was young, I used to walk to school, and I would skip my meal and all. And so I tell people, please stop reminding your own history, to the younger people, because to me, the success is, I call whatever your current station in life is, versus your point of origin. So where you came from. So if you are born into wealth, let's say you are born into wealth, and now, I'm someone who was not born into wealth. So someone who was absolutely poor, person. And that person had generated a lot of wealth and success. So the delta for that person is different, from the person who already had the wealth. So I say, so who's more successful? So I think people have to take a view, of that. And the other thing is that, the basic human, spirit, love, jealousy, competition. I mean, that has been around forever. So people will compete, people are loved, people will give love, people express love. So all the human elements, and this is in history, you see that, I mean, and even that drama just plays on even today. I mean, it's no different, so people still have, tensions in the society, in the community, in the families. So the idea is how do you really navigate and how do you deal with that? Right. So when I talk to people, I basically say, just do what you feel is right, and also let the older generation, let the young people, kind of, go and trust them. You'll be fine, like that.
Right. Absolutely. I always I encourage next gen, and also I coach leading gen,
Yeah.
or older gen quite a bit as well, is while the empowering parts of your family values and principles, keep that, make it congruent, make it aligned with your next gen as well. But the best competition is with your next gen's future best self, as how God created them. Don't compare incessantly against other people all the time, with a lot of envy, a lot of jealousy. That is not good human nature, right? So it's a conditioning process. All right, let's move on. Well, I want to keep it on time within about 40, 45 minutes here. So I think all of you have sort of partially answered my next question, but I want to go deeper, as in terms of what have you found that have worked well in preparing the next gen for success in life, in career, in business, in succession planning, and the upcoming or already ongoing wealth transfer. You could talk about a subset or two, or give maybe focus on one thing that you have observed, patterns at work. Why don't we start with Wendy this time? Or should I say, start Wendy, how's it?
So patterns at work is talking to kids young and talking to them early. And I think a lot of families make the mistake of thinking, no, they're too young, they don't understand. I think they've heard of Google, they get it. So they wait too late to go into it. And I'll use one of the, I won't say the name, but the biggest family office in New Zealand. I really think they do it right. And I've seen so many families, but on the day a child's born into that family, the family office sends a letter. Congratulations, you've been born into a really wonderful family office. And yeah, it's to a newborn baby, but they also send a letter to the parents. Then every year on the birthday, the child gets a letter. And around age 5, they say, we'd love you to come in. And I think there's 300 people in the family. And we'd like to come in with your cousins. And we're going to talk about how we can help some other kids. And they're so very involved, and it's so age appropriate. And by the time they are 18, they not only know their legacy, they know their history, they know who they can depend on and why they're there. They have a financial education that most kids wouldn't get to an MBA. And they've done a lot of that with their age peers in the family. So they've also built those bonds and connections to fall back on if they need them. And I envy, I know we're not supposed to envy, but I envy their family office structure and the way they've handled it. It's impressive.
Yes, I admire a lot of people, absolutely. Vish, what do you think? Patterns that, your observation of patterns that have worked.
Just excuse me. Okay.
Sure.
Excuse me 1 second, please.
Sure. Maybe Scott, maybe you'll give your.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Why don't we Scott go first?
Sure. I think the thing that works, or that I've seen work the best, is really focusing on human capital, not just on financial capital. Really creating a frame that's big enough in terms of the learning that you're trying to do with a younger generation, that's about them and not just about the money. A lot of families and a lot of family offices have great, learning material, but it's mostly about the money. It's mostly about spreadsheets. It's mostly about personal finance, and all that stuff's really important. And compound interest is really important. And all those things are really important. And they very quickly send the implicit message that what we're really here to do is take care of the money. And if you're 15, if you're 25, if you're 55, that implicit message is often a turnoff, right? It's often received and, okay, I get it. What I'm really here is to learn some stuff so that I can help those people in the family office take care of the money. And I think it's important if you can broaden the frame and say, wait, there's financial capital, and that's a topic, but there's also human capital, right? There's also you as a human being. And the question is, can you succeed? What is success going to look like in your life? All that intangible stuff is what really draws people in. So I tell families all the time, can you imagine a year of family meetings or 5 years of family meetings where you never talked about money? Right. It just wasn't on the agenda. And sometimes people just kind of scratch their heads and say, well, what will we talk about? And the answer is you talk about topics relevant to the humans in the room, that can draw them in, engage them about their own development, their own skills, their own learning, their own path, whatever it is. And the money is also important, but that you can get to that.
Right. I'll add to that as well. I cannot agree more. Vish, patterns at work.
So the patterns that work from my perspective, because I recognize that, every individual is unique. Okay, we all have certain set of skills that we are born with, certain new set of skills, and the value that we acquire. So what happens that in this situation, so I try to recognize, people's individual strength and skills. And what you do that rather than trying to equate everybody, and it happens in this like the family succession planning, because or just because everybody, let's say, gets equal amount of wealth, doesn't mean that they can really make equal amount of contribution, because some people are not very good at managing their wealth, some people are very, very good at that. So the idea is like, how do you really keep harmony? And I always go back to concentrate on your own skill set, that you're endowed with, okay, that either the God has given you, or you have learned from the family, or from the environment, whatever it is. So recognizing individuals and individuals, and try to get the best out of them, and make sure that they that hey, you collectively are doing something together. You are collectively are doing a common good. So that is what I always emphasize on, and that's how the entrepreneurs I mentor, they succeed. Because if the job requires a mathematician, don't give that to a dance instructor, right? It doesn't work. So same thing. Okay, so this is the really key that I have seen, and I'm fortunate that I can talk to people and they can tell me, and I can bring out the best in them so that they can continue to excel in their area, and yet they can collaborate and value and respect other people.
Absolutely. All of you have covered this quite well. I see a lot of mechanical processes out there. Governance, mechanical, wealth, money. Absolutely, right? Wealth is important to all of us, right? And like my observation, having mentored literally one-on-one, a lot of high achievers, right? Next gens. I'm very conscious on beefing up what I call their personal operating system. Mm-hmm. Pragmatic 3 EQ. What I mean by that is a pragmatic, meaning practical and also results oriented, emotional, social, and leadership intelligence. Not just EQ, which is emotional intelligence. Okay, emotion is an instant manifestation of your belief system or beliefs, or your self-talk or your thoughts, and a bit of physiology as well. But social is your compassion, right? Your love in action. And that's congruent with great family principles. And leadership is holistic, right? So I do that. And number one, that's horizontal. Another horizontal is that I literally beef up my next gen students or mentees, visionary story, their soft skills, okay? Their critical thinking, creativity, communication, collaboration, team skills, and then their strategies and execution, as well as, very importantly, their emotional and mental state of mind management. Okay, their 4S, that's my 4S framework, 4S and 3 career framework. It is so powerful. I do that with everyone. Whether you're 15 years old in high school, you want to get into Ivy League school. I send so many kids into all the 8 Ivies in Stanford and Berkeley, et cetera, right? To me, it's very routine. That's called vertical goal achievement. Okay, high school kids is about getting into the best school. Some kids don't even have to go to the schools, right? But a lot of parents prefer to go to great looking schools. A little bit about face as well, right? Social currency, you know that. New York, Silicon Valley, come on, we know that, right? And at the same time, it's just as important to beef up the horizontal, the 3Q and 4S. So with that, then they could handle issues. They could handle problems thrown at them. They could handle enemies bombarding them with missiles in the future. Don't you agree? You see that all the time, right? Okay, with that, why don't we move on to the next question? And we're doing good in time. We talked about, some common struggles that we've seen so far, patterns at work. What about some patterns that you have seen out there that have not worked so far, or lessons learned, right? Or mistakes made that you have observed that, I feel that growth, we grow more. I'm growing all the time, right? We all, wise people grow all the time. What Jeff Bezos mentioned is that intellectual humility is a greater soft skills. Keep growing, keep with humility, learn, and improve, right? and not to be all egotistical, right? I'm a billionaire, I got a lot of power. No, don't do that, right? Because you have enemies everywhere surrounding you who want to take you down. You need to improve the mindset and skills as well, soft skills especially. What common mistakes have what mistakes have you seen or maybe made first person or third person observation? And because we tend to do more to avoid future pain, as well as to gain the pleasure for successful, wealth transfer, etc., and other goal achievement. What are some mistakes that you have observed that you would like to avoid in the future? Why don't we start with Vish this time?
Well, there is a popular, joke that goes around, here that, well, the first generation makes it, second generation squanders it away, and third generation starts all over again, right?
All the time, don't you? Yeah.
And, there is some truth to that, because there is especially when you're talking about like wealth, okay? I mean, it's no different from even giving money to an entrepreneur, for example. Okay, you just give them too much money, they don't know how to appreciate the money, right? Because they will just misspend, they will, put in the wrong places, and you don't acquire get the desired result. So the issue here is that, and especially like, it goes back to the value system, because family is the first school. Family is the first school, okay? When you are raising our children, okay, children watch us how the parents behave. It's not that do what I ask you to do. That does not work, okay? Do what I do. I mean, that is more important. And this is where a lot of the families, there's a disconnect, because I've seen situations over here. People say, oh, what happened here? Okay, I said, well, you guys didn't raise them right, because kids are dummy. They're smart. They watch you. They observe you, your value system. They know, how you carry on. And when they see the disconnect, okay, I mean, this is where it happens, okay? I mean, take a look at the hippie generation, because I came to the US when the hippie generation, they all were in India. A lot of hippies went to India. I said, wait a minute, these are not poor kids. They were born into wealthy families. Then I see all the hippies, okay? You hardly see the hippies coming from the ghettos and all the kind of stuff, or they were struggling. So these are all the world, but the kids were lost. They say, oh gosh, our parents are doing this, but we don't agree to whatever they're doing. And the parents, because, I mean, just because they came and lived from New York to San Francisco or travel all over, who paid for the airfare? I mean, how did they buy a ticket? How did they do all that kind of stuff? So family was supporting them anyway, because they really did not abandon these kids. But then these kids, they went through kind of process. And I've seen this situation, even those people who came through that generation, and I met a lot of them, and over time they reformed. They say, well, this is okay. The recent, I mean, everybody, you are very idealistic when you are all that stuff, okay, in your, younger years. But as the time goes by, then you say, well, man, you become, a lot more the value conscious, and, a lot of idealism, you want to solve the world's problem, in a hurry, and and I've seen it all the time. So I think what happened that to us is that the families who are, let's say, or let's call mentors or whosoever, you have to raise them right. You have to share, and when they know that you are a genuine person yourself as a father or a mother, yes, they will learn from you, and they're not going to destroy the value that you have. But if there's a disconnect, and that's what I see, and that's the reason a lot of tension that you see that develops, and the wealth gets lost, and then people go, and the struggle happens because there's a disconnect. So that's what I just see. And I try to remind people all the time that people, my friends, they call me, what happened to our kids? My kids, I said, well, I think you should accept some blame as opposed to trying to fix the blame on them, because, did you raise them right?
Right, absolutely. And Wendy, what's your take? Mistakes that you've observed made in families that you
there are some family offices in the New York City area who, and this will probably agree with me in this, I hope, and they had such a struggle to achieve that their biggest goal was not to have their children ever work. And what a disaster that has been. Because
yes,
yeah, they stay in control of everything until they drop dead, basically, and the children have no skill sets. At all. They can't even take care of themselves, let alone those things. And if they do not have good fiduciaries involved in their life,
Mhm.
it's going to go downhill really quick. So that's a big one. And the second biggest mistake I see is where we have embedded family offices. And Scott, I'm not talking about your family office, but there's a lot of real estate family offices where they're embedded into the operating company. And you will see 55 and 60-year-old children working 9 to 5, still reporting to dad. Most of them never wanted to be in that asset class anyway. They want to be artists or songwriters or authors. And here they are, so miserable that you just want to go grab them and give them a hug. It's not good.
Right.
So there's no freedom for
Such a
them to
disconnect.
explore, what they want to do with their lives. And they're paying every day. We quietly in the family office circles call it the Prince Charles syndrome, but they pay every day and there's no freedom and there's no way out.
Yeah.
And those are the two biggest.
Yeah, I see that everywhere. Absolutely. Scott, I'm sure the, Sam Zell family is great, right? What mistakes have you observed in families or in the FO world?
The Sam Zell family is pretty great. But no, look, there's mistakes in all these families. I was going to agree with something that Wendy said on the prior question about starting early. The mistake that I've seen a lot of families make with the next gen is they do start early, which is good. But then there's this sort of phase where they've encouraged the next gen to get involved, right? They've come to family meetings and do this family learning and come to this thing and want to be on this committee and do all these things. But there's this lull in the 20s or 30s or even 40s where it's not clear what they're actually offering. What are they supposed to be doing, right? What's the actual practical, pathway if you wanted to get on the board or if you wanted to help run things? Maybe you don't want to do any of that and you want to go be a yoga instructor or you want to go be an artist, and that's great. But what is the path as a practical matter to getting involved and having it be tangible? And what I've often met is next gens who say, well, they invited me in and then there was no there. There was nothing to do. My parents aren't really ready for us to get involved. They just wanted to make it sort of look like they were ready, and they get very frustrated and a little bit cynical. And I think that's really dangerous. I think you have to,
Very
if
dangerous.
it's going to be a real invitation, what's the next steps, right? Where's the pathway? And make it appropriate so that the people who want to be this involved can be this involved, that involved. Great. What does that really look like?
Right. Let me add to that. Beautiful insights, guys. 80% psychology, 20% mechanics. Not 80% mechanics, 20% psychology. Okay, number one. Number two, I go back to the pragmatic 3Q4S model that I go back, right? Now, here's one thing that drives me nuts. I see this all the time. You got these parents who love the kids to teenagers, right? I could talk about older kids as well. Get into Ivy League schools, right? The big name, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, MIT, Berkeley, et cetera, right? It's so routine for me getting in. But what I notice is that a lot of kids that go to these competitive schools, they're stressed out of their minds. They are anxiety ridden. And some of them depressed, a few of them even worse. I could tell you horror stories, okay? But the parents, their families don't talk about that. Because the social currency, the pride is so big, right? And that's why I'm so big in helping you achieve the greatest life stage goals, outcomes. And that is, as high schoolers, it's about college admissions in most cases. Once you're working in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it's about your career, business success, personal success. Once you have a family, it's about your parenting and your family success as well, with joy, with peace, with more joy and more peace, right? More just kind of better character. Is really character in a lot of ways, because a character is a sum of all habits and choices. Like for me, I'm continuously applying Jeff Bezos' principle, right? Intellectual humility, improving my character. Hey, 2 years ago, I used to have bad habits, but today those are great habits. But I'm still working on these. I'm conscious in that. So my spirit is really in it, not just mechanics. That is so, so important. Guys, we got a few minutes left. If I could ask you one more question or any additional insight or tips that you would like to dish, what would it be? This time, why don't we start with Scott? Any additional?
The question I probably have asked or would ask is, what's keeping you up at night? What are you worrying about? And my answer to that at the moment is, particularly for families with single family offices, is the unintended consequences of the family office and the impact of the family office on the family culture.
Mhm.
I think the simple story that we tell ourselves in this space is the family has a set of values and interests and goals. It creates an architecture, it creates a family office to execute on those interests and goals. And the family office, that's what they do. They go do it. And that linear story isn't 100% of what's going on. In fact, sure, the family's values and culture influences its family office, but the family office then feeds back and starts to influence the family itself. And you can end up with some unintended things, like, I've worked with families where they're trying to teach their kids resilience. They're trying to teach their kids grit. They're trying to teach their kids to be self-sufficient, all the things, Wendy, that you were talking about. But the family office on the side is providing an unbelievable level of service and perfection for that family. They're wrapped in a bubble of wonderful, nothing ever goes wrong and it's all perfect. How does a kid learn grit and resilience in that context? And so, I think that unintended feedback system is the thing that worries me. And I think families and family offices have to be really careful about.
Yeah, I do see some conflict between the family office executives and the principals, right? The matriarchs and patriarchs.
Can be.
Wendy, what's your take? What's additional insight, additional tips?
I guess as tips, if the patriarch and or matriarch allows it, and sometimes it's hard to get that kind of agreement, but to try to get the ability to meet with the next gens away from their parents, to find out their goals and to find out their stressors and what they need, what help they need to be successful, and to have that be confidential unless it's something to their welfare. Hey, I'm doing a lot of drugs. Well, no, we do have to go talk to mom and dad about that. But sometimes around, and I've seen it more times than not, their parents, kids will just clam up. Oh yeah, whatever they want. Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm on board. And it could be the last thing there. And you don't really even have a clue about that until you can confidentially walk them away and say, what interests you? Right. What interests you about the family office? Is it the charity, the governance? Where do you see this being in your generation? What do you want to do with your life? They can't have that conversation for more reasons than I can say here, and I'm sure Jason's heard it all, right in front of their parents sometimes. So I think having their own space and their own, ability to talk and to have their voices heard, even if they're not in control, is really important.
Yeah, I could talk all day long about what you just mentioned here, because I coach my next gens and their parents, right, one-on-one. Again, no one's gonna be able to, let's say you got 3 people in a room, no one's gonna air out their secrets, right? But one-on-one, I tell you, I know secrets that's scary. I know more about the patriarch, matriarchs than a wife and husband knows about each other. I know more about the next gen more than parents know about them. But it's necessary in order for me to guide both of them. And as a byproduct benefit, the relationships get better. The peace of mind gets better at the end of the day, right? The private one-on-one, getting behind the firewall of mind and soul, it is so important. Vish, 1 more minute.
Can I do my last little tip really quick?
I'm sure, please.
My last tip is if you're going to do a family reunion and you're not a per capita family office, if you're more per stirpies, do an endowment on that family reunion. Not everybody is going to be able to afford to go to 4 Seasons and came on. So do an endowment. It keeps the family together, it keeps culture together, and it's really helpful.
Man, we should have a session 2 on this, right? Vish, 1 more minute, then we have to wrap.
What I've seen, actually, the family office, the managers, let's say the professional hired managers and staff, I think I've seen they really do a wonderful job because they are part psychologists, psychiatrists, they do all the kind of stuff. And even the family members, they tend to confide more in them because rather than among the family members, because they kind of become the, go-to people, and they do the brokering and all the kind of stuff, negotiating among, sometimes warring factions, sometimes people who have different agendas. And the other, in many situations, excuse me, I've also seen that a lot of times maybe a member of the family becomes the manager. And that sometimes, excuse me, if that person has the highest respect from the family, that also works wonderful.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So I value the manager, excuse me, right through.
Take your time, drink some water.
I'm done.
Okay, wonderful. I think I think we covered quite a bit in 40 minutes or so. And man, we could go all day long over drinks, right? Socially in due course. Here we are. Thank you so much again, Family Office Conference, Family Office Magazine, Ty Murphy and your team for this opportunity for us to hopefully contribute and inspire a little bit. We all have fun, have had fun, and we'll see you soon, I guess. Thank you, guys.
Thank you again, Jason. Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Wendy, Scott.
Thank you.
Great meeting you. Had fun.
Okay, thank you, Scott, Wendy, and Abish.